Deanna Spagnola has been serving in education for 25 years. Her service has been nothing short of exemplary. Deanna previously served as the District Assistant Director of Humanities at French Road Elementary School as the assistant principal. Before coming to Brighton, she served as the coordinator of special education for the Greece Central School District after many years teaching at the elementary level. I am also very excited. I am really, really excited about this to announce that Deanna has been named the Director for Student Services following a full search and interview process. Deanna has been serving in this capacity as an interim director following the retirement of Carolyn Rabidoux last school year. She received a Bachelor's of Science in Elementary and Special Education, as well as American Studies from Boston College. She went on to earn an MS in Reading from Nazareth College and an administrative certification from Canisius College. She and her husband, Mark, have 3 daughters. Thank you for all that you do for our children, and thank you for being impactful and an admirable woman in leadership. Welcome, and I now yield the floor to you.
Well, Crystal, thank you so much. And to the PTSA, thank you for inviting me this evening. Again, I am humbled and honored to be with all of you celebrating Women's History Month this year. As we celebrate, and Crystal listening to in the beginning, so many amazing women in our country, our nation, true change makers who are leading the way for all of us. As we think about this school year, we can celebrate the accomplishments of women overcoming hurdles in terms of gender discrimination. Just last night, watching the news regarding the discrimination in terms of pay and salaries on the US soccer team, the women's US soccer team. Women in the arts, women-owned businesses. I can think of so many right now, even locally, some dear friends of mine who own their own businesses in a very male-dominated world. When we think about just even the past election, the number of women voters who turned out to participate in that experience, let alone the number of women elected to public office, not to mention, most importantly out of all of that, our own vice president. Amazing, amazing people. But tonight's not necessarily about talking about all of them, but it is about honoring them and honoring their journey. And I'm humbled to be considered to speak tonight again about all of those. However, also we look ahead to work that is still needed to be done. And when I think about, when we listen to the news, the events of it in Atlanta, when we think about what women have been faced with in terms of the pandemic, pivoting their careers and their lives at a moment's notice, shifting to now being homeschool teachers and educators. Also, women who've lost their jobs as a result of this situation. Many of whom, 50% of the job force lost are from women, let alone if we also think about women of color, the rate is even higher within that percentage. When we think about issues in terms of women's health, when we think about sustainability, environmental issues, access based on gender issues, racial disparity, and violence directed towards women or in racial issues as well. Our work is not done. We have so much more to do. And as I step back and think about the phrase empowered women, empower women, how do we do that? How do I do that as an administrator and an educator here in our wonderful, amazing school district? How do all of you who've come out to join and think about these things, how do we do that? How do we celebrate one another's stories? And I was thinking about, as I did my research, thinking about preparing for this evening, I saw some different blurbs and anecdotes around Women's History Month really needing to be Women's Her Story Month. And I started to think about the word story. And then a dear friend and colleague of mine shared a quote in a forum that we were with each other last week. And it was a quote from Kamala Harris, We are all part of a longer story, but we are responsible for how our chapters are written, which reinforced again me thinking about celebrating our stories, celebrating our own individual pieces and where we are contributing. That same night, as I'm looking at the website, looking at social media, and thinking about its impact on women, and that's a whole other story and a whole other presentation in of itself, I came across a clip art that said, "Your story is beautiful." And when I think about the theme of a story, and all of our stories are beautiful, each, regardless of the title, the accomplishment, in our journey. And I ask ourselves, do we celebrate the journeys of each other as women and the women that we're young women that we're educating? Do we celebrate their path to where they want to go, and where the individuals that we mentioned at the beginning, that Crystal, you mentioned at the beginning, do we celebrate their steps along that path? And I don't know that we always do that. I don't know that we celebrate one another as best we possibly can. Do we honor our moments of vulnerability? Do we honor and celebrate when it is okay to ask for help, when it's okay to accept the help? And that is not a point of weakness, but it is leaning into the strength of someone else and growing from that opportunity. So I'm going to share a little story too, is when Crystal called me to invite me to participate this evening, I was in a spiral, thinking about all of those amazing women that we've referenced in the beginning, thinking, my story is not like that. I didn't do that. I don't have this title. And I began to compare myself to other women, and I diminished my own strength and my own story and my own purpose. And I was quickly reminded that evening when I came home to share with my family about Crystal's phone call, and I see many of my family here tonight. And they said, "What are you doing? You can do this. This is exciting. This is a celebration. You should be celebrating this." And it made me think about our circle and those folks that are my circle, who build, and I see some other my colleagues here tonight who are my circle, who build and help build me up. And we celebrate one another's strengths, and we assist each other with one another's weaknesses. So I'm going to share something that's on my desk right now, and it's been on my desk for a few years. I keep it. It was actually something from my own college that came in the mail, and I just keep it on my desk, and I often refer to it. I was able to grab it tonight. I'm here in my office, and it says, "What brings me joy? What am I good at? What does the world need me to be?" And at moments of frustration, I will actually, or concern or worry, I will look at this and say, what brings me joy? And often the work that I'm doing, the hard work that I'm doing, is what brings me joy. The celebrations of the accomplishments of our students, even if it is a little step in a direction towards a big daunting goal, that is what brings me joy. But I want to add to that phrase, what does the world need me to be right now, today? And I invite you to also think about those things. What does the world need you to be today? Not in the end, not as your end goal, not with what you're trying to accomplish, but right now, today, for one another. So it's interesting, Crystal, that the video that you showed started off with, how do you run? Because I have an analogy that I was thinking about as I thought about my own girls. And it's an analogy because my girls are runners, and they are very active in terms of track and cross country. So I thought about this analogy, and now, most of you who do know me well, I'm not a runner. I can run if there's an emergency, if there's a student, if my family needs me. Oscar, I see you laughing. You've seen me run at school before, but I see you laughing at me. I am not a runner. I don't like running. My girls love running. I don't like running. I can run if there's a fire or something really scary is chasing me. That's the extent of my running. Anyhow, back to my analogy. As I watched my girls run, beginning of my track mom experience, I was also always so interested in who got first, who got second, who got third, the place, the title. My girls quickly reminded me as runners, it's not about first or second or third. It's about how you got there. It's about looking back at your running splits, the times as you're going around lapping around and around. Did it get faster? Where were you weaker? Where are you stronger? And it's that buildup of all of those splits that gets you to your end goal, that gets you to your personal record, not your first, your second, your third, but your personal record, and that's your own accomplishment. So I think about that as, do we teach our girls, our young women, do we women together, do we do that for each other? Do we celebrate our splits for each other? I don't know that we always do that. We have that title in mind. We think about that end goal. Do we lean into each other for strength? And can we teach our girls to do that same thing when they fall down, when they need help, when they weren't first, when they had to take a gasp for air, when they didn't get what they wanted, when they weren't elected, when they didn't get the job that they wanted or the job that they thought they wanted? I thought about an expression I heard that sometimes we fall down, and when we fall down, it's because there was something really good to pick up and find there. And it is often what we pick up from those experiences that help add to our splits and help us get to our personal record. So I'm going to stop talking for a moment because I've referenced some friends, some colleagues, my own family. Those are my circle. And I want us to think about the women in your lives, or the women that you rely on, or the women that you help build up. And I'm going to pause for a moment, and I would invite you to think about those names, or their titles, or their names, because maybe it is mom, maybe it is neighbor, sister, brother, dad, whoever it is. But who is your circle, and who's your circle right now? It might be different than your circle from a few years ago. Who's your circle? Who do you depend on? Who do you want to invite into your circle? So I'm going to stop talking and pause, and I'm going to invite you if you want to. And Dr. Leaner knows this as well, because it's called Waterfall. I would welcome you, before you hit enter, to enter some names or some titles into the chat. So I welcome you all to do that. Think about who's your circle. Type those names into the chat. I invite you to think of 3, 5, maybe it's only 1 right now today. And when I say go, we're going to look at all of the names who are a part of our circle. So let's go ahead and let's look at each other's names. I see first names, I see titles, I see teachers, I see family members. Look at all these amazing people. I'm not going to ask you to share what they do, who they are, but there's a pretty strong circle that I'm seeing that is around all of us. Maybe you're going to see a name or see a title of someone that's going to make you think about somebody else as well. I see some people still typing. I think Emma's still typing a name there. So I ask all of you, oh, your mom, nice job, Emma, thank you for participating, to think about how you have built somebody up today, how you've strengthened your circle, how you've invited someone into your circle. I also ask you to think about your own story and the ability to listen to someone else's story. Have you listened to someone's story and where they got to and how they got there, as opposed to celebrating the title, the first, the award? Because it is through that listening that we get to know those people even greater. And it is through that listening that we can then also strengthen each other and strengthen to continue to do the work that I talked about in the beginning, to empower women to be empowered women, to look at those daunting opportunities that I listed, the work that we still have ahead of us. It is through those little steps, those little splits, those increases or decreases in your time and your effort that will get us further to cross that finish line. So I just think too, back to thinking about all of those builders and voices of change, Crystal, that you talked about before. We can do that. We can do that on a daily basis. We can do that for one another and not be overwhelmed by that title or when we fall down, because it is through those opportunities that will make us stronger. Do we celebrate the resilience of that youngster who gets back up? Do we celebrate the person who comes back the next day? Do we celebrate the person who engaged in a thoughtful, difficult conversation? Do we congratulate them for engaging in that hard conversation and making us think about something in a different way? So I'm going to go back to my track analogy as I wrap up for this evening. But I think it is our responsibility as we pass that baton off to our friends and our colleagues, regardless of our age, and to the students and the young women around us, that we pass a baton, encouraging them to go further than we've gone ourselves. Not because it's a competition, not because they are beating us, because we will celebrate them going further with that baton in their hand, equipped with strength and wisdom and the strength of the circle that got them to where they are. And it's not about, and I'm going to just pull this from the video, it's not about running like a girl. However, it is about stepping back and running like a human. And it is running for what the world needs you and needs her to be, the best human and the best themselves. Thank you so much.